Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the notion that Boris Johnson could, in theory, be made to give evidence under oath when he faces the Privileges Committee over his potential lies in Parliament. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, shortly before Parliament ended the session and we got ready for the local elections, where any of you out there who are able to vote, please do make sure you do. MPs ordered an investigation into whether or not Boris Johnson deliberately lied to Parliament on 4 occasions relating to what he really knew about illegal lockdown parties in Downing Street. It's incredibly bad news for Boris Johnson. It's also a sign of just how weak his leadership is right now, never mind any results that may come out tomorrow. You know, even with a large parliamentary majority, he was not able to make his MPs vote the investigation down. He was forced to allow the motion to pass unopposed rather than lose the vote. Now, the investigation is not going to begin immediately. The order says that the Met Police finish their investigation first. It might well be that this wraps up pretty quickly this month, or it may drag on until summer. I don't know. Then there will be the summer recess. It's not even certain that Boris Johnson will still be Prime Minister when this third investigation into his illegal lockdown parties begins. We have the local elections going on today. I've seen various predictions, but I still find it difficult to believe some of the more extreme ones. I can see Labour making net gains, of course, you'd expect that. I can see the Conservatives making net losses, you'd expect that. There will hopefully be some interesting patterns emerging in the voting trends. That's what I'm looking for. But the raw results shouldn't be a tipping point for Tory MPs to get rid of Johnson, because if they've kept him this far, I can't see tomorrow's results doing anything different. But who knows? I don't know. Maybe they will put the letters in tomorrow. We'll see. But if Johnson survives that, then the Met will be announcing more fines after the election. That could mean the more politically damaging parties get linked with Johnson. That will heap further pressure on him and his MPs. Now, let's say he gets through that. Then there's the 2 by-elections coming up, because one of his MPs was convicted of the sexual assault of a minor and another was caught viewing tractor porn. If the Conservatives under Boris Johnson lost both of these by-elections, that would trigger a real panic amongst the MPs. So there are several obstacles for Johnson to get through before the Privileges Committee might even start to work. But let's go on the assumption that Boris Johnson is still Prime Minister when investigated by the Privileges Committee, which may not be until after summer. Again, it all depends on how quickly the Met sort themselves out. Or at least let's assume he's an MP at that point. Should he give evidence under oath? I mean, your first question may be, can he be made to give it under oath? Well, I've watched a few select committee hearings and I don't recall anyone giving evidence to them under oath, but apparently it has happened. And it can certainly be made to happen. There is the Parliamentary Witness Oaths Act 1871, and it is still in force. It reads, or part of it reads, any committee of the House of Commons may administer an oath to the witnesses examined before such committee. So it can be done. In fact, it has been done apparently. I've just missed it. So now there's a procedural and political question of whether it should or would be done. First of all, what's the benefit? Boris Johnson is being investigated for lying to Parliament. The penalty for deliberately lying to Parliament is to resign your office. But he's refusing to do so, and even if the committee finds him guilty, he would still refuse to do so. He'll only go when his MPs make him go, through one procedure or another. Given that he's lied to Parliament and continues to lie to Parliament, wouldn't he also lie to the Privileges Committee? Well, if there was no heightened penalty, yes. Consider this. If Johnson is found guilty, they'll have to recommend a serious suspension. His MPs would probably have to approve it or look like they're propping up a lying Prime Minister. It would have been less damaging for Tory MPs to have voted the investigation down than to vote down the conclusion. So if Tory MPs weren't prepared to vote down the investigation, they're certainly not going to vote down the punishment. So Johnson would no longer be an MP. That would be all there was to it, because there will be a recall petition. It will succeed. He would be allowed to stand in the by-election, but not only is there a good chance he could actually lose his seat to Labour, but he'd still be a Prime Minister who is not an elected MP, who's just been found guilty of breaking the law and deliberately lying to Parliament. No way the Conservatives could let him carry on under those circumstances. So yes, Johnson would absolutely lie to the committee as an all or nothing tactic. However, if he is under oath and he's found to have lied to the committee, then perjury comes into the equation. Without the oath, if Johnson lies to the committee, he's lied to the committee. It's the same as lying to Parliament. There's no extra punishment unless they just up the punishment for doing so. It's the same offence as he's been investigated for. But if he's under oath, then as well as the parliamentary punishment, he could, in theory, face prosecution for perjury. Now that carries a prison sentence of up to 7 years. That would make the political calculation for Johnson trickier. Under oath, if he lies to the committee and his lies are provably discovered, he risks imprisonment. So the stakes would suddenly be a little bit higher than just losing his job. How does he like porridge? So is there an argument against it? Well, yes, there is, a big one. So I was reading a blog by the ever insightful David Alan Green, a constitutional legal expert who cites someone else writing something interesting. And without using the term, he suggests parliamentary privilege might make perjury prosecution messy. And I hadn't considered that, and actually to look at it and think, yeah. See, MPs are protected from legal proceedings based on what they say in Parliament. It allows MPs to denounce arseholes in Parliament, basically, without the fear of being on the receiving end of a vexatious lawsuit. Yes, it can be abused, but it means that MPs can shine a spotlight on harmful practices in our society without the fear of tiresome and expensive court cases. Imagine this, if MPs couldn't actually denounce poor practices of large corporations or very wealthy individuals because as soon as they did so, they found themselves being sued. Okay, so there's protection for that. But what happens with a perjury case? If the committee puts Johnson under oath, and there's nothing that prevents the oath being applied to him, or any MP, then if he's caught out lying, he's surely committed the offence of perjury. But his guilt, obviously, could only be determined by a criminal court, not a parliamentary committee. But parliamentary privilege means that MPs can say what they like in Parliament, free from interference from the courts. Now, I don't know the exact legal position. As far as I can tell, no one knows for certain what the legal position is because it's never really been put to a constitutional court, like the Supreme Court, to think about. I'm not saying that Johnson couldn't be prosecuted for perjury or that the court couldn't judge such a case because of parliamentary privilege. I was reading a document that sets out when they were talking about should we change parliamentary privilege, saying that it's for the purpose of an MP raising something that they believe to be a fact or opinion that's important. You could argue it doesn't protect an MP from saying something they know to be false, but it does also broach the issue of criminal charge as well and seemingly protects them from that. So it would be constitutionally messy. It would be a case of an MP saying something in Parliament for which a court would be intervening, effectively. It might even be that the court makes the decision it can't prosecute an MP for perjury for something they said in Parliament because they don't want to have anything to do with it. In fact, you might actually need an extra court hearing. You might, before you can prosecute Johnson, you might need a Supreme Court hearing to even determine whether or not an MP can be prosecuted for perjury for something they've said in Parliament. Could get very messy, could take a long time. I imagine when the various rules were written, nobody really considered that the oath that a House of Commons committee can place on a witness might have to be placed on an MP. I suppose it could still be used as a bluff, though. They could still put Johnson under oath. There's nothing stopping them doing that. And it might be, people will argue, no doubt in the right-wing press, that parliamentary privilege protects him. So it's like there's no point in it. But others could say, I'm not so sure, And the doubt might make Johnson behave himself rather than risk the possibility that he isn't protected. Because after all, the court case to determine, the Supreme Court case to determine whether or not he's protected would not take place until after someone tries to prosecute him. So nobody would know for sure unless there was an attempt to prosecute him. And there wouldn't be an attempt to prosecute him unless it was believed that someone could prove he'd lied to that committee under oath. Of course, if Johnson is no longer Prime Minister at that time, or more specifically, if he's not an MP because either he's resigned because he got stroppy or for whatever other reason, then the problem goes away. Johnson could still face the investigation. There's nothing suggesting that if Johnson's no longer an MP, he will suddenly not face the investigation. They may decide to drop it, or they may say, no, let's carry on with this. and he wouldn't be an MP. He would then no longer be protected by parliamentary privilege, and then the problem goes away, and he would be under oath, under pain of perjury. But it is an interesting one to ponder, isn't it? But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. Maybe even click on the join button if you'd be interested in membership. And until next time, I'll see you later.